All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Bert Groban, CEO of AeroBio, Enrique Vega, CEO and co-founder of Azalea Vision, and Dr. Jeremy Yang, Strategic Partnerships Manager for Life Sciences and Healthcare across Greater China, Southeast Asia, and Oceania at IMEC. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will, as soon as we all find our places. So we have very eminent speakers here today, and I will maybe start with letting them introduce themselves in 1 or 2 minutes, introduce their companies and what they are about, and what is the connection with Flanders. Enrique, if you want to pick up, please.
This is working. Good morning, everybody. I'm Enrique Vega. I'm CEO and co-founder of Azalea Vision. It's a startup from Ghent University and IMEC. I've been working in medtech since the very beginning, and I started in this project in 2020 with my co-founder, which is here in this room, put it in place technology to develop smart contact lenses with electronics inside. And since 2020, we have done a lot of things that I will go into details afterwards.
Thank you. Bert, please.
All right. This one's on. So great. My name is Bert. Quick shout out to the organizers of Switch. Congratulations on the 10th edition. First time I participated was 10 years ago, and congratulations on SG60. All well done. I'm with AeroBio. I've taken over quite recently as the CEO of the company. There's been a journey where we spun out the company from a very well-established ecosystem coming out of the SMART ecosystem, which is the Singapore MIT Alliance for Research and Technology. So part of the entire conversation is very strong Singaporean rooting, and we can talk about it a little bit more later. But really, how do we take biotech that is homegrown Singapore and leverage from the best that other ecosystems are offering?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. So I represent today IMEC, which is the name card for high tech in Flanders. So I often use the metaphor that IMEC is the Flanders A-star, that we develop, core technologies, mostly in semiconductors, but we also do a lot towards the application in healthcare. So IMEC by today, we have like 6,500 global talents. And last year we had a financial year revenue of more than 1 billion, and we have 70% of our revenue coming from the bilateral industry collaborations. So very glad to be here to share more story about how semiconductor technologies is converged with healthcare.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And if you don't mind, I will stay with you for the first question, because we have seen the coming together of a lot of disciplines. I already mentioned biotech, but also tech bio. A lot of people know IMEC as a center for microelectronics and semiconductors. But when we were doing the presentation or the preparation for this panel just a few minutes ago, you said actually IMEC is a treasure chest of different platform technologies that can be used for other applications as well. And I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of an introduction on the role of life sciences and health within IMEC.
Yeah. So semiconductor and life sciences usually are rendered very two different sectors. But if you count in the last 10 to 15 years, you will find that semiconductor technologies is heavily converged in healthcare industry. So taking, for example, the today's topic, precision medicine as a kind of concept. So if you go back 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you will find, for example, in genomic sequencing, from that era, you will start to have the chip, very complicated chip with a sophisticated structure installed in an optical instrument that allows you to sequence the DNA. And actually, IMEC is one of the very important player in that domain. So probably most of the people in genomic sequencing industry may know that IMEC enabled the leader PacBio to develop very innovative next generation sequencing. And if you also count, the future development or future tendency of how semiconductors can enable life science, so you will probably see that we are really living in an era of a significant transition of the next wave of technologies. So AI, robotic surgery, and a lot of new like quantum, a lot of new technologies are evolving there. So if you want to improve your healthcare to a more smarter level, so of course semiconductor is indispensable. So like this year we announced a kind of collaboration with Merck. So to develop next generation so-called MPS microphysiological system, and also in other name organ on chip. So we are trying to define whether in next generation we can make a better tissue or organ models to replace animal models. So that will be very disruptive if that can create a new market. And we are also very impressive that more and more new startups now coming from academia or universities, and in Singapore it's doing very well. So we are also not just engaging with big corporates, but also with with startup companies. So this is the aim of why IMEC is come here. So we want to develop more partnerships with local innovators to see that how semiconductors can enable your bold idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And I think you raised a very interesting point, and I will maybe throw that to Enrique, because I know you mentioned already in the introduction that you are a startup from University of Ghent, but also IMEC was involved in your development. It's part of a whole ecosystem that I already mentioned during my presentation. And I just wanted to ask you, Enrique, how do you feel that ecosystem? How has the ecosystem enabled you to grow within Flanders, but also outside of it?
Thank you. Actually, I realized during the last years that Azalea will not be where it is today without the help of the Flemish region and from IMEC and the University of Ghent. We are a pure spin-off from University of Ghent and IMEC. Thanks to the work done inside IMEC by my co-founder, Andres Vasquez, who is here in the room today, he incubated the nanotechnology that we are putting inside the contact lenses with the University of Ghent and IMEC, a joint venture they have at Ghent. So during almost 10 years, the technology was developed there. We joined forces in 2020, and very soon IMEC, the University of Ghent, and IMEC Expand, which is a venture capitalist associated with this environment, were ready to help us to spin off the company. And this is where we got the help from the Flemish government with Flyo. They were very helpful, put it in place with us, a file for a grant, a non-dilutive money of almost 2 million that they gave us even before we created the company. With this conditional letter, we were able to go to venture capitalists and tell them, we have a promise of 2 million of non-dilutive money. You can eventually invest with us. And here is the way we put in place the series. This was around 2020. We hire more than 10 people. We fill in all the conditions of the grant. We got the money, and we start developing this technology, which is actually very powerful because, as Jeremy was mentioned before, we have a very, very nanotechnology, so thin as a third of a human hair, that we can introduce inside a contact lens and develop a very sophisticated ophthalmology projects, and also put in inside biosensors. And this is thanks to the whole environment from IMEC and the University of Ghent with the help from the Flanders community.
Okay, thank you very much, Enrique. Maybe it's a very good testament to how Flanders is helping homegrown startups, but maybe to go the other direction and then looking at birds, you also have a spin-off that also issued from a university collaboration here in Singapore. Last year or beginning of this year, you made the choice to expand into Europe, and you choose Flanders as your landing spot. Can you explain a bit on what are the determining factors for you to choose Flanders, and how also that works into your upcoming European plans?
Yeah, absolutely. And similar, we're a biotech company. We came out of the Singapore MIT Research Alliance. The space where we're sitting in is in microbiome management. So we're dealing with health, personal care, and medical conditions at some point in the future, where in the microbiome context, certain species are being overexpressed. The technology that we bring can help us very selectively manage those downwards. So we're doing personal care, beauty care, healthcare by managing unwanted bacteria without creating negative impact in a microbiome context like typical antimicrobials do. They're very good at killing bacteria, but they're causing more issues than they're creating, and you might have a risk for resistance. Our technology is the complete opposite. We target very precisely the bad actors and remove them out. And hence our platform technology has found over the past 3 years when we spun out from the institution, very strong footing in Singapore in a very strong supported research environment, commercial environment. Our IP is rooted in Singapore. Our foreground IP is rooted in Singapore, but we're spreading it out very globally, which means that we are at a stage where we want to scale up. We've got very strong investor traction. We've got very strong commercial traction. And we want to grow that. So we looked at Europe because Europe for us is a very significant big market. All the French beauty care companies are there. All the German ingredient manufacturers are there. Switzerland is a very important market for us as well, even though not part of the EU, but geographically. And hence, we did a very comprehensive comparison of where do we want to put our second foot. One will stay in Singapore, one will go in Europe. And the entire context will be Belgium was the sweetest landing spot, and Flanders in particular, for multiple reasons. One, from a geographical market access point of view, we had the best possible office that we've set up in Europe to be able to access. Right? So from a sales point of view, it's an expansion from what we do here and place a hub in Belgium, in Flanders, in Antwerp in particular. From a research point of view, our future pipeline developments for microbiome development at a fundamental level, but also at an application level, broadening from the current skincare conditions we go to feminine care, to scalp care, personal care, home care, air care. There are very strong microbial research groups at the University of Antwerp and in the biotech ecosystem in Flanders. So for us, from a fundamental research point of view, access to research and supported by government in multiple ways helps us a lot. One of the details that is very important for us, because we're very IP driven, Flanders and Belgium has a way to also leverage and capitalize on IP, where IP generated in Belgium contributes with governmental support for commercialization and other incentives. So for us, it is a very strategic reason for access to market, access to fundamental research capability, access to support systems, and access to IP foreground and whatever have you. So, and this was much stronger. So we literally compared. So I didn't want to be biased because Antwerp is my uni town, Belgium by origin. So we did a comparative analysis across all of Europe and all the objective metrics. Flanders for us was the place to be across all the different areas.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bert. And I think that gives a very good overview of how the companies work together also with governments to indeed have strong IP. And maybe for the ones that are not familiar with Europe, it's a block of 27 countries, but it's a unified market. So once you get approval for a product within one country, that approval is valid for the whole market. And that actually helps you access over a client base of almost 500 million people at the same time. So that's, I think, also very interesting to mention. Maybe looking ahead, if I can just ask my panelists to offer some insights on the trends that you are seeing emerging from Flanders and why they would be interesting for startups from Singapore and the region to see what Europe can offer. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I mean, the relationship that we have with Flanders at the beginning and then with Europe, you mentioned at the beginning about clinical trials. And of course, we are already developing our clinical strategy in Flanders, and that's great. But with Singapore, we discovered a few months ago that we can also collaborate with them in terms of electronics, in terms of biosensors that we can put inside the contact lenses. So we are discovering in the last months that there are a lot of opportunities in this country that are very developed and that we can eventually put in place in our products. There is another dimension, which is also the pure market. It's a great place to be in terms of the whole market for Asia. We are getting a lot of traction with also investors here in Singapore. Investors in non-dilutive money, but also venture capitalists. We are now raising money for our product. So it's we are having a lot of interviews during this event. We were also here 6 months ago, and we also got a lot of traction. So it's a very nice place to develop in many dimensions, and we are really happy to be also here in Singapore.
And I think for me, one of the insights is at national level, there is very good bilateral relationships. So operating in Singapore, operating in Belgium and Flanders in particular, from that bilateral point of view, I think creates a lot of opportunities. Whether it's Belgium or the entire EU working with Singapore, I think that makes it easier. And as a testament, we have the Belgian ambassador sitting here, so the relationships are really good, and we look very much forward to a very productive future and further reinforcing that. The other thing, and that was reinforced during Supernova in Antwerp earlier this year, is Belgians in general, Flemish people in general, we tend to be a little bit modest. We don't make a lot of noise, but we're really, really good at what we do. So if you look at the biomedical research, if you look at biomedical manufacturing, if you look at the framework that sits around it, I think that's another point where in Flanders he can find really, really great anchor points. And Flemish people are very warm-hearted, so it's very easy to work with. And actually, I was telling Kim earlier in the runner-up, is that from a regulatory point of view, yes, Belgium and Europe has a lot of rules, but it's been our experience that we've gotten access to the networks, access to the key stakeholders, access to the incentives in a very organized kind of way. So bureaucracy is something we haven't experienced moving from Singapore into Belgium. So Singapore is very well organized, very well structured. Flanders and Belgium at the same way, very connective. So going to Flanders to set up your business and get going and become very action oriented. On our side, moving AeroBiome to operations in Europe, in Flanders, has not have any barrier whatsoever at this point in time.
Yeah. Thank you, Bert. Jeremy?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. This is a very interesting question because coming to the topic, which kind of partner or which kind of startups that we want to work with. So actually, in the last 10, 15 years, IMEC was kind of successful in establishing the big partnership with big corporates. And that's really advanced the progress of semiconductor and also the healthcare industry. But if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, and we deeply feel that more and more disruptive technologies will be brought by startups. And even it's just a concept in the research stage, or even they don't have really some proof of concept or prototype, nothing, but they just come up with ideas. But still, that technology deserves to be enabled, with a lot of resources, because you can never predict whether that technology will create a new market. And this is very, not just from the perspective of increasing revenue, but also increase in terms of giving social impact and generalizing the supply chain and the market. It's very important. So taking one example that we did before is, for example, the example of PacBio. So yes, the technology, of course, there is large part coming from Belgium, but one important, the supply chain and the manufacturing part is done in Southeast Asia. So you can see that in Southeast Asia, it really have the potential to grow up together with the European companies. So if you look longer for next 5 years, you will find that since the tendency is that more and more startups will emerge. So it also becomes one of the mission of IMEC to adapt itself, how to enable startups. So before that, IMEC usually sell the IP license or sell the customized project with a big corporate. But if you consider the startups, you will find that yes, they have challenges. But so IMEC now also provides more business models. So for example, when we talked with startups who even do not have a prototype or even to know how to define a spec of the product, we are able to provide some consulting or some proof concept study, to let the two sides, the experts, sit down together and to brainstorm, to think about how we can think about together how to define the product. And going forward, that if the company grow up, they typically, if they do deep tech, the initial step is that they need a huge money. So for IMEC, we also establish our own capital from like 10 years ago, and we invested the companies that who has the first-in-class technologies. So if you look at the IMEC portfolio, we really have very good outcome. So, for example, Enrique, the Azalea Vision is a IMAX spin-off, and it grows up. It now really attracted more and more venture capitals eyesight. So I think putting all these as a example for next 5 years, I think IMAC will be very much dedicated to grow up together with startups, and especially for Southeast Asia, for Singapore, and this is the our aim to expand our visibility here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy. Maybe as I think startups are indeed very important. As we are entering the last 5 to 6 minutes of this panel, I would just like to ask our panelists, what is the key takeaway that you would like the audience to remember from our chat today?
I could say it was what you said already: beer, chocolates.
Okay.
So if you look from an overall expanding your business into Flanders, I think for me the key takeaway is we might not be top of mind of a lot of people as a region to go, but we should be. It's a place where you will be surprised in terms of quality of life if you move. I think from Singapore to Flanders, you find a wonderful place to set up your business, to live your life, find talent, and with a direct flight, keep on moving between the two. I think we're top of the line in what we can offer in biotech, in healthcare. And if there is one takeaway that I would leave the wider audience is, please consider Flanders. There is so much to find. If you open the door, talk to Flanders Investment and Trade. They're a wonderful organization with well-rooted people, very action-oriented, to be able to set up the different relationships to Flanders. So if anything, if you need health tech, biotech, go and explore and find yourself a new home in Flanders.
Yeah, I would say I have a lot of points in common with what you are saying, but I think it's in the whole process I described before, how we started with the support of the Flemish region and the IMEC, but the environment of investments, venture capitalists in biotech, medtech, pharma in Belgium, it's impressive. I get the question many times as a Spanish guy. They say, what are you doing in Belgium? Well, I've been 30 years in medical devices, and the best place to be working in medical devices is Belgium, no doubt. And that's something which is great. Another topic you also mentioned in your presentation, it's the number of clinical studies that you can run and how easy is to run these clinical studies with ethical committees working in a very speedy process with fantastic hospitals and centers where you can develop this. We are now in clinical phase working with the University of Antwerp and the University of Ghent. So it's really easy to go through the whole stages from the fundamental research to the spin-off, to the initial investments, to the clinical. And as you were also saying, for market access and development, Belgium is a key point to be, Flanders particularly. And I think it's a lot of resemblance with what we find here in Singapore. We are now thinking about starting some development in Singapore because we find exactly what we found in Belgium 5 years ago, that we can now put in place this and develop some fundamental research and some development of products here in Singapore.
Thank you, Enrique. Jeremy, to close off.
Yeah. So for this question, I like to really echo to my previous judgment. I said that I often use the metaphor that Flanders and Singapore are so much alike. IMEC and A-Star is so much alike. So if you talk about the two countries, we definitely can find the mutual beneficial points that can work together. So really welcome the Singapore innovators if you are making some deep tech venturing, and if you require microchip technologies, just come to Flanders and visit IMEC semiconductor fabs, and there you can really find IMEC as a treasure house of a lot of advanced semiconductor technologies. At least, I think for deep tech, IMEC can provide you a very valuable, not just probably not real work, but at least some very important intelligence that to help you. And also, if you look at the talents of both countries, that you will also be amazed that small countries gathered the global talents coming from more than 100 countries. So actually, I would say that look at next 5 years, there will be a lot of opportunities for startups, and IMAC is given his position to enable the startups, the brave innovators. So that's I would like to use this congratulations or wordings to the audience today.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I don't think there's much that I can add to that, actually. We heard about how startups and spin-offs are very important, how the ecosystem aligns, both here in Singapore and in Flanders. And I'm actually very grateful as well to Enterprise Singapore to give us the opportunity to present here today, but also for the partnership that we've had with them over the past few years. It's the fourth time that we're here consecutively, and it's always been a very interesting experience. But also indeed the government support. I would like to conclude with an invitation. I already mentioned that we have a booth here at M12. You're more than welcome to visit us, but also our companies. They will be there around, of course, as they will be having a lot of meetings as well, but they will be there as well. You can meet them there. But also to Supernova, Bert already mentioned it. It's a startup fair conference that is being held in Antwerp next year. And also for Knowledge for Growth, which is really the ecosystem conference, I would say, on biotech that we have in Flanders, and we will couple that to an ecosystem tour. So if you're really interested to discover what we have to offer, we can offer you a tour at Knowledge for Growth to meet our companies, but also meet our knowledge institutions or universities and see how collaborations and partnerships can take place there. I would like to thank my panelists for joining me on stage today and the insights that they have shared. And also thank you, of course, to the audience for attending in such big numbers. And I hope we can have a lot of meaningful discussions after this as well. Thank you.